Welcome back, everyone. We finally hit that mark, episode 20 here of season 1 on the review. Give everybody a round of applause as we cross into this milestone. We got plenty more to go, though. Conference tournaments underway, NCAA tournament upcoming, and maybe a little bit of stuff in the offseason as well. Mat Mlodzinski will join me in actually, he's going to join me now because I don't have a starting five because we have a lot to cover today. But we have 6 conference tournaments to preview. We're going to go through them as quickly as we can because Mr. Bossman here has other obligations, and I know I can't keep him for more than an hour. So we'll go ahead and just jump into it. He'll give his best and worst of the weekend later today as well. We'll have our 3-point play as always. But yeah, we'll go ahead and start with the first of 6, and I have been following this conference solely because my sister's school is in it. The Atlantic Sun. I was actually watching a game of theirs recently. They announced the addition of 3 new schools to their ranks. So good for them. Congratulations. You're expanding. And maybe someday you'll be a top-tier conference. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but you're working your way up there. It's not the only surprising storyline they gave us. Belmont University in their first year of Division I play. Heck of a season in the A-Sun, guys. Congratulations. I know your last game didn't end up the way you wanted to. You lost to Liberty. You're the 2 seed in your tournament. But hey, hell of a run to start your Division I life, I guess we can call it that. Now, they're not the only team that is ineligible for the tournament, though. North Alabama, who is the 4 seed in their tournament, is also ineligible for the NCAA tournament. So they got nothing else to lose at this point, so I would expect a big run for them in the A-Sun. Let's hear what Mat Mlodzinski has to say about it, though, because a lot of these tournaments are very interesting that we have today, especially because there are multiple maybe not in this conference, but there are multiple teams in other conferences that have the potential to make the tournament and really should, but because they're a mid-major, they might not. So, Matt, your thoughts on the A-Sun?
Yeah, Liberty's kind of run through the A-Sun for most of the part. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, Bellarmine's been really great as well, but unfortunately, they can't make the tournament. Liberty with Darius McGee averaging about 15.5 points a game. Him as well as Chris Parker and Elijah Cuffey are all shooting over 40% from 3. They've got a couple other guys that are shooting around 40 and 30%. So they're a team that just puts the ball in the bucket. And they have some good wins on the season as well. They beat Mississippi State and South Carolina. They only lost by 4 to TCU. And for all intents and purposes, I would even consider a 13-point loss to Purdue not even that bad either. Purdue's a really, really good team. And a 9-point loss to Missouri. So they have not been getting blown out, and they've won a couple games against the power conference teams. And as far as winning games in their conference, they've done just that. But I will highlight one other team, and that's Lipscomb. It's a team that did split the season series with Liberty. Both games were at Lipscomb. Lipscomb's 3rd in the A-Sun. But what they have is Asan Asadullah. And again, part of it here at CBB Review, we like to highlight the guys that we've done interviews with. He was the Conference Player of the Year last season. Looking at trying to do that again this year. He hasn't had maybe the season that a lot of people thought he would have, but only playing 28 minutes a game, he's still put up 14 points and 8 rebounds and 3.5 assists at the center position. So he's a big man that can turn the game around. And while Liberty's my pick, Lipscomb's a team to watch out for.
Los Angeles, I think I actually watched the Bellarmine-Lipscomb doubleheader, and Lipscomb won both of those games, but they were very close. And like you said, he's a big man. He was way bigger than everyone else on the court. Yeah, well, you mentioned everything that we had in the rundown, so we'll move on to our second of 2 previews in this A block, and it comes from the Patriot League. Shout out Samantha Croston, coming to us from Colgate University, one of our fellow graduate students. Colgate actually one of the top teams in the Patriot League as of now. They don't have a bracket out, unfortunately, because league play continues over today and tomorrow before their actual tournament gets set to go. So we don't have a bracket, but we can tell you that pretty notable players, CJ McCollum, Mike Muscala, played in the Patriot League and made waves in the NBA as well. So not a conference that lacks talent, just lacks really visibility, notoriety. So because we have no bracket to go off of, we're just going to do it hypothetically. And we'll ask the same questions, Matt. The story going into the tournament, thoughts on the top seeds, who's most likely to get upset, and the dark horse.
My story in the tournament is the fact that I think Colgate might be the best team in New York State. I did an article on that a couple of weeks ago. A couple of years ago, they were a 15 seed. They played 2 seed Tennessee. They were losing by 12 at halftime. Colgate took the lead late in the second half And interesting, their starting forward, Rapolis Ivanauskas, only played 16 minutes in that game. He was out the entire second half. I firmly believe that if he was in that game, they might have won that game. Jordan Burns had 32 points. He had, I believe, 8 threes. Don't quote me on that. Not a lot of the same players, but Jordan Burns is still on this Colgate team. He averages 17 points a game, 5.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, and he almost averages close to 2 steals. He is an all-around player who's one of the best scorers and one of the best players in, I believe, the country, and I really do. And he's a small guard who can get his shot off and shoot from deep. They got other guys like Nelly Cummings and Tucker Richardson. Again, it's a guard-heavy team. Keegan Records does do some work down low, but in a Patriot League tournament, and again, I'm saying this because I believe that if Colgate gets in, they're going to pose a threat to any team that they play in the NCAA tournament. But I believe in the Patriot League, they are by far the team to beat. Unfortunately, they didn't really have a non-conference schedule, so you can't base much off that. But at 11-1, there's not much to go against. The only other team that you can really bring up is Navy. They're 15-2, but they lost to Maryland by 30 points. They did beat Georgetown, but a 30-point loss to Maryland just has me thinking like, okay, they might be able to run through some of these lower-level Patriot League teams, but Colgate's a high-level team. They'd be really good in a lot of conferences, and I'm going with the Raiders.
Well, like we said, we're running through things fast today, so we're going to take our first break. Coming up next, a couple more conference tournament previews, as well as stories that came out over the weekend that we thought were pretty big. All that and more coming up next on the review. B-Block here on the review, episode 20. The boss man joining me for, I believe this is the 3rd straight episodes, which might be a new record for really anybody coming onto this. We're going to get some new faces, guys, and I can tell you that we're in a bit of a bind with Friday's episode because if we had gone about it like we're doing this, we would have had to preview 13 conference tournaments, actually 16 conference tournaments on Friday. So you will be seeing some Instagram lives where we'll bring on other writers and we'll be able to preview those. So stay tuned for media on that, as well as when those are going to be. We have a poll up in our group chat to set all that up. For now, though, we'll focus on what we have to do today. But before we get to our next 2 conference tournaments, these are the biggest stories in college basketball since we last saw you from over the weekend now. We talked about Ayo Dosunmu having that facial fracture last week, I believe, Matt. And now we have another team in the Big Ten that's going to be missing not a starter, but a key role player, and that's Iowa. So Jack Nunji, he's a sophomore forward. He's been playing a pretty significant role off the bench for the Hawkeyes this year. He's going to be out the rest of the season after injuring his right knee in the Hawkeyes' loss to Michigan on Thursday. Now, the school officials said Nunji has a torn meniscus. He's going to undergo surgery next week. He was averaging 7 points, 5 rebounds a game. Pedestrian, but hey, when you're off the bench, you need that sort of production. It's the second time Nunji suffered a season-ending knee injury in just over a year after he tore his ACL last year. That was also in the same knee. So, Matt, Iowa's going to lose some depth here. Does it affect them in the long run?
Yeah, I think it definitely could affect Iowa, only because Iowa's a team that kind of feeds off of their depth. They have a lot of they just have a team that, while they play their starters a lot, they're a team that doesn't necessarily go, 6 or 7 deep. They're a team that I believe can put in other guys and they can kind of pick up if the starters aren't pulling their weight. So I think if you don't have one of your main players, it's going to have an effect. What I will say is that Iowa runs through Luka Garza. So even though this might be a small hindrance, it's still the same team. They've still got other shooters on this team. But when you look at the Big Ten is a conference that makes you play at full strength because every single game is a big game. So sure, it might kind of hurt in the Big Ten tournament. But again, this is a team that, and I got the stats up right now, they got 9 players that play at least 10 minutes a game. So it's going to be a little bit of a loss, but they've got other guys that can step up in there. And I think overall, it won't be a reason to be like, okay, let's blame this. It'd be one thing if Garza or Wieskamp or Bohannon were out. This isn't that.
I will say, despite those role players only playing 10 minutes, a loss on the forward line, especially, it could have hurt, especially if Garza does get into foul trouble, either in the Big Ten tournament or in the NCAA tournament. But that's a discussion for another day. Moving on, though, Roy Williams, congratulations, sir. Through all the trials and tribulations you had last year and this year, you have reached the 900 win threshold. He did that on Saturday, and he did it in very dramatic fashion as well. ACC game against Florida State. Florida State has been one of the best, if not the hottest team down the stretch in the ACC. And they were up 16 on the Tar Heels before halftime yesterday. Then Walker Kessler happened. 20 points from him. UNC mounts the comeback. They get the win, and they celebrate Roy Williams at midcourt with that framed number 900 jersey and maybe some stellar dance moves in the locker room, if you remember that from a couple years ago. So Williams joins Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim, Jim Calhoun, and Bob Knight as the only Division I men's basketball coaches to hit 900 wins. But he was the fastest to reach the milestone, doing it in just his 1,161st game as a head coach. Congratulations to Roy Williams, and they seem to be the blue blood that has kind of weathered the storm and should be in the tournament, even if they have a poor performance in the ACCs.
Yeah, I know a couple of people were getting on me in one of the Facebook chats that I post the Matty brackets to, and for good reason. UNC, while they had 14-8, 8-5 record going into that Florida State game, really no marquee win, and then the Florida State game happened, and now you see a North Carolina team with a win over perhaps the ACC title favorite, and 15-8 and 9-5 in conference. That's impressive. I think they've got really good players. I don't think they're a Final Four contender, but I think they're a team that can win a game. And if you give UNC between a 7 and a 10 seed, and they play a 1 or a 2 seed in the second round, I don't know what team wants to face Roy Williams coach North Carolina, especially if you're like in Illinois or, maybe in Ohio State, a team
even a Baylor coming off the COVID pause.
Or a team that's just not really there all the time. And if you're Jay Wright in Villanova, you'd be ready for that. But if you're Illinois, you haven't been in that position all the time, and now all of a sudden you got to face Roy Williams. It'll be interesting. But congratulations to him and a guy that has been great. It was great at Kansas and has been great as a Tar Heel.
So we didn't find a third story for today, but I did put in the rundown a big story from the panelists, if they so choose. So Matt, do you have a big story from the weekend?
You know what? I actually don't have a huge story. I will highlight one series though. And that was San Diego State and Boise State. The Mountain West has been playing 2-game series throughout the season, and San Diego State won both of those games. And I think that was huge. I think Boise State's a team that right now kind of went from looked like they were going to make the tournament to maybe now in need of a win. They're 18-6, 14-5 in conference. But when you lose 2 opportunities against San Diego State, that won't help the case. It makes it's a conference that has chances for good wins, but also not as many as the power conferences. So I'll just highlight that real quick.
Well, those are the biggest stories from this weekend in college hoops. Now back to the present with our conference tournament preview. And I think we can introduce this next conference by just using the word Belmont, because Belmont has been fantastic this year. And really, they've flown under the radar every year, probably since I was born, because they've been good for a while. They didn't end up the season with just 1 loss, which, kind of sucks for them. But we can say with pretty fair certainty now that Belmont and Morehead State ran the Ohio Valley Conference this year, and they're the number 1 and 2 seed. 8 teams in the tournament. Their field is set, and I think we can expect Belmont and Morehead State to meet in the final, don't you, Matt?
Yeah, there's actually a few other teams in here. Belmont, obviously, with the fantastic season, finishing 24-3, and the only thing that kind of hindered my thoughts on them, I had Belmont as like a 10 seed. I was like, they're good. They've got Nick Mlodzinski down low. He's a great big man. They've been there before. Then they lost the game to Eastern Kentucky, and that's not terrible. Eastern Kentucky's 20-6 or so. Like they're a really good team. Then they lost their last game of the regular season against Morehead State, and like you mentioned, the 2 seed in the tournament. Not a bad loss at all. But to end the season with 2 straight losses, and they were close games. The Morehead State game was in overtime. That's just, to me, like, okay, make sure you have it together. And again, they have a really good team. They've got 5 players that average at least 10 points a game. Like I mentioned, Nick Mlodzinski's real good big man. Grayson Murphy, he's a guy that averages 11, 8, and 5 assists. Like they've got an all-around team. But 2 straight losses to end the season is not ideal. And I just hope that they're on their A game going into the OVC tournament because they're a team to keep an eye on come March.
Well, then I'll ask you this. I only had Belmont and Morehead State in this question because it seemed like pretty reliable to say that both of them would make the final. But I'll add Eastern Kentucky in there because their record is so close to those two. Is there a scenario that you can think of where 2 or all 3 of those teams can get into the tournament and make the OVC and multi-big conference?
I really don't. I think if Belmont had finished the season, the regular season with just 1 loss and then maybe lost in the championship by like 1 point, then I think to one of those teams, Morehead State or Eastern Kentucky, I think that could have happened. I'll throw one more team in there for the OVC. It's Austin, PA. They might not have the best record. They're 10-10 in conference, 14-12 overall. But what they have is Terry Taylor. And Terry Taylor is averaging 22 points and 11 rebounds as a 6'5", mind you, 230-pound guard. But he is a guard that rebounds and scores and is awfully tough to defend. A guard that shoots 52% from the field. Another guy that we've been lucky enough to have with us here on CBB Review, and a guy who I believe is the best mid-major player in the country.
Also, Terry Taylor, just a great basketball name. Imagine Gus Johnson calling that in March Madness. That would be fantastic. We'll move on to our next tournament, though, and it's a similar situation to the OVC because it's the MVC. And Drake and Loyola Chicago, like Morehead State, Eastern Kentucky, and Belmont, just ran through the Missouri Valley Conference. And I believe they split their season series. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. Drake was undefeated for a while. I believe Loyola is ranked now, and Drake fell out of the rankings. But there are 2 teams that all of us here at CBB Review think deserve to make the tournament, but everything's working against them in regard to the MVC has always been seen as a one big conference, and some other Power 5 or 6 team would steal that bid from them, even though either Loyola or Drake may be a better team.
Yeah, I've also firmly believed that over the years, I mean, you've seen it. Northern Iowa got the 9 seed and they beat Kansas the one year with Ali Farouk-Manesh. And
that was a great game. Yeah, that was a great game.
I love the Missouri Valley. I think that it's a conference that, while it's not a power conference and it might not even be like the A10 or the American, it's kind of like Conference USA, where you get good basketball at a high mid-major level. Take Bradley, for example. They beat Toledo by 2. Bradley's 12-15. Toledo is the best team in the MAC. Bradley also only lost to Xavier by 1. They lost to Missouri by 1. They're under 500, but they are consistently good against other good teams. Valparaiso's 10-17 overall. They lost to away game at Vanderbilt by 6 and away game against Purdue by 7. They also played Toledo. That game wasn't as close, but you get the idea. They beat Drake once and they lost to Loyola by 2. So again, a team that's 10-17 has had a couple good games against these other good competition. A couple of weeks ago, I said that I think it was when Drake split with Loyola, and I said, look, if both of these teams reach the MVC semis, let's say Loyola loses in the semifinals. I mean, they're top 25 right now. You've got to put them in the tournament. You don't just not put a top 25 team in. And then I said, if Drake loses in the finals by like a point or 2, is it a 3-bid conference, especially if it's to like Missouri State or one of those other, 4 or 5 seeds? Now I don't know because Drake lost that game to Bradley. And while I said that Bradley was a very good team, now you've got a Drake team that's 24-3. 3 of those losses came in conference.
It's a similar situation to Belmont or one of those teams in the OVC, and it's harsh.
Exactly. And I think it's tough, but I also think it's hurt Drake where their only game against a power conference team was at Kansas State, and Kansas State has been awfully terrible this year. I know they just picked up a big win, but Drake just has the only thing they have working for them right now is the win over Loyola, and that came a day or 2 after they lost by 27 to Loyola. So is it really that big of a win. They were both home games too. I think that Drake has a shot. I think they can win this tournament. I think they've got great players overall. They've got Roman Penn, they've got Darnell Brody, they've got Shanquan Hemphill. But if you're picking a team to win this conference, it's Loyola. They've got players from that Dream Team Loyola Final Four team. And I think they can get back to the NCAA tournament and win a game.
But for the NCAA, just put them both in. Please, if you want the best teams in the field, put them both in. If not, we'll be upset about it here, and we'll make it known, even if you don't see it. We'll head into our second break, though. Up next, Mat Mlodzinski's best and worst of the weekend, and another edition of our three-point play, plus another conference tournament preview. All that and more coming up on The Review. C block here on The Review. I'm not sure what C, I guess C stands for conference tournament in this regard. We're making this up as we go, guys, in terms of the A, B, C, and D block. The D block will be the dunk on Mat Mlodzinski block, even though that didn't happen this weekend when we were playing pickup. But either way, we're back on The Review, episode 20. The boss man there in his nice orange polo, despite a less than stellar performance from Syracuse basketball teams over the weekend. The women's team gave it a good shot against NC State. I'll give them that. I watched that game, and I was very impressed with how they played. I believe our buddy James Corrigan tweeted out yesterday night or today that they'll be a 5 seed in the ACC tournament. So best of luck to the Orange women. For now, though, let's hit our best and worst of the weekend. Mat Mlodzinski, let's hear it.
Yeah, best and worst of the weekend. I think you've got to start with the game that happened on Sunday. Iowa kind of coming back and giving themselves a big win. While I don't think Iowa could fall down past a 4 seed at worst, they were definitely in the wrong direction and picked up a big win against Ohio State. And now in the opposite direction, Ohio State, who was considered a 1 seed just about 2 weeks ago, has now lost 3 in a row. And I still think they're a 2 seed, but you could even make a case that they're now a 3 seed. That's a huge story of the week. And then the bubble. I think the bubble right now is just a big story because I don't know if the bubble's been this big ever. Just purely from the fact that most teams haven't played the same amount of games that they normally would have. So there's less to really compare these teams against. And since the non-conference slate was less, you're really basing it all on conference, and it's just this huge jumbled mess. If there was ever a year to say, hey, we need to add more teams to the tournament, this would be the year, because while maybe teams don't deserve to get that tournament bid, it's really hard to tell if they do or not because there's not enough to really grade them off of. So those are really my 2 big stories to look at. I'm sure there is much more, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll go with my worst first. Baylor, coming off a COVID pause, just looked in disarray, looked out of order. And Kansas really just kind of took them apart on, I believe that was Saturday night. And I was shocked because I saw a team like Michigan, who was in the top 5, well coached, could execute. They had a bad first half, and then they came back and blew the doors off of Wisconsin in the second half. Baylor wasn't able to do that, and I believe their best player was held pretty much in check by the Kansas defense. Best of the weekend, though, even though they lost, I'm going to give it to Matthew Hurt because I saw him play in an all-star game my junior year of college in Minnesota. At my school, they would host the Minnesota State High School All-Star Games. And pretty sure Matthew Hurt was there. I wasn't sure what to think of him then. I know what I think of him now. He almost single-handedly beat, I don't even remember who they were playing this last weekend, but he almost single-handedly beat them, had 32 points. Who was it? It was Louisville, I believe. And it was him going at Carlik Jones answering. It was a great game. And Hurt ended up fouling out in overtime. But he really showed something the other day. I believe he had 32. It was a career high. And he's helping Duke, at least make a case saying, hey, we can beat these ACC teams, guys. Let's get our business done at the tournament, try and get into the big dance. And those are our best and worst of the weekend. We'll move on to another conference tournament preview. And it's finally time to take a look at number 1, the last undefeated team in the nation, albeit they're in a mid-major conference. Gonzaga. They really shouldn't be in a mid-major conference. You guys should probably move to the Pac-12 because you probably run through the Pac-12 just as easy as you're running through your conference right now. So like I said, Gonzaga looking to keep that streak going, trying to enter the NCAA tournament with a chance to run the table, go undefeated the entire season, albeit in a COVID season. So I think it'd even be more of an accomplishment, to be honest with you. I'm not sure who we can say would really be a challenge for them besides BYU. And even then, is BYU really a challenge for? I know there were talks of Gonzaga and BYU both opting out of this tournament. Gonzaga, especially since they've pretty much cemented themselves. And we talked about that. I actually talked about it with Sam Bass on an episode a while back where we said how would that affect a team like a Loyola or a Drake if they lose their conference tournament and Gonzaga becomes a bid stealer because they didn't play in their conference tournament.
BYU, I'll start with them. They play 10 men deep, and they have a guy that has only played 2 games, averaging 14 minutes. They are practically at full strength, an 11-man roster. That's something to note come NCAA tournament time, although I still think they need to win. I mean, I know they have really good non-conference wins. They beat San Diego State, and then they beat St. John's, Utah State. They've got some good wins. So I guess I shouldn't say that. But for BYU, the one big thing is Matt Harms, who was the best transfer last season, came from Purdue. Hasn't really put up the year a lot of people have expected him to. And again, that's because they put he's only playing 22 minutes a game. If this guy was playing 30, 35 minutes a game, he'd be averaging 16 or 17 a game. It's just that they run these guys in and out so much. And I wonder if they're going to change it up more or if this is how they play their basketball. For Gonzaga is not only the best team in college basketball this year and the easy pick to win it all. They are one of the best basketball teams I've seen since I started watching college basketball. It is no doubt about it. Between Kispert, Timmy, and Suggs, they have a trio that is almost unbeatable. They don't even go totally deep, but they've got guys like Andrew Nembhard and Anton Watson, and they've just got the main guys that they play would literally be like starters on every single team in the country. And I know that's easy to say because they're number one, but there's not a lot of teams who would have any more than one person that would start over any of these guys. There's a handful of, like, you've got Timmy's one of the best centers in the league. Kispert's one of the best forwards in the league. Suggs is one of the best guards in the league. That's very rare that happens.
Keep in mind, Timmy going into their game last weekend was shooting at like 83% over the last 3 games. I don't know how you're going to stop that when you have Kispert on the wing and Suggs running the point. Exactly. Also, my man Joel Ayayi, best rebounder in the high energy player, is going to be the X factor for them going down the stretch. That's my 2 cents on that. And BYU, I will say this, when they've gotten into the tournament, they've lit up the scoreboard. A couple years ago, they got into the first 4, ended up losing to Ole Miss in a game that was like 98-95 in regulation. They had a guy named Tyler Hawes who would just shoot the lights out. They took so many threes, dude. They were like the Warriors of college basketball. They just didn't win the game. But it's going to be an interesting tournament to watch. That starts this weekend. Or it's sometime in the middle of the week. We'll move on, though, to our 3-point play. And like I said to you earlier, Matt, this one's going to go a little quicker. I know you're under a little bit of a time crunch, so we're going with the secondary rule today. We're going to keep stuff simple. You know what the secondary rules are. You don't get an assist, but you get 3 strikes. You can get 3 of these answers wrong. Now, the scoring system is going to work like this. There are 22 answers we're looking for here in this list. You get 5 right, you get a point. 10 right, you get 2. 16 right, you get 3. 22 right, you get all 4. We focused on the SEC tournament last time out. Today, we're focusing on the Big Ten. You're seeing a theme here because there's not a lot of stuff that I think you guys know about, like the OVC tournament. There have been 22 Big Ten tournaments held. Plenty of teams have won, but we're not talking about those teams today. You are going to list off the runners-up from each Big Ten tournament, starting from the last one that was held, 2019, as far back as you can go.
Wow, I really like this. And again, like, this just goes to show, like, you're like, you feel like you follow, like, I'm like, oh, I follow most of the conferences, but then you realize I'm like, the only conference I really follow is the Big East at that part of the level. And that's really interesting. I like the I don't think I'm going to get hardly any of these right. I'm just purely going to think of who were the best 2 teams in the Big Ten by year. So who might have been.
I have a feeling you'll at least know like the first 2 or 3 just because of recency.
I honestly don't think so.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started then.
Hold on. 2019, correct.
Well, yeah, I am going to. So here's the thing. I'm going to tell you what year we're in. I'm going to tell you who won.
Okay.
So that should help a little bit. All right. So in 2019, the winner was Michigan State.
I believe the loser, I'll go with Purdue.
That is incorrect. That's your first strike. It was Michigan. So tough one there. We'll see how it goes. 2018, Michigan won the Big Ten tournament.
I remember when they won that Big Ten tournament. I'll go with Ohio State.
That is incorrect. It was Purdue. This is
That was Purdue.
Okay. It might just be a thing where we go through these, and if you get enough right, because I can't let this go this quick. In 2017, Michigan won again.
2017. Something tells me this was Michigan.
Yes, Michigan won it. So if you want to use that as
Oh,
your final
sorry, you
answer,
said Michigan won it. I'm sorry. Ohio State.
that is incorrect. It was Wisconsin. In 2016, Michigan State won the tournament.
Well, Michigan went to the Final Four, so I'll go with them. Maybe they were playing hot.
And that is incorrect. It was Purdue. In 2015, 2015, Wisconsin won the tournament.
And that makes it hard because I know Wisconsin went to the Final Four that year, so we're hoping they were the runner-up because I was like, maybe that'll be it. Wisconsin won the tournament that year. 2015. Michigan State.
That is correct. Your first one, you got to go back to 2015. But hey, you got one at least. Only 4 more to go to get a point. In 2014, Michigan State won the tournament.
Ohio State.
That is incorrect. It was Michigan. In 2013, Ohio State won the tournament.
That was another year that Michigan went to the Final Four, so I'll go Michigan.
That is incorrect. It was Wisconsin. In 2012, Michigan State won the tournament.
Couple teams on my mind here. I'll go with Ohio State.
That is correct. You've gotten 2 correct now. In 2011, Ohio State won the tournament. And I guarantee you're not getting this one right.
Ohio State won the tournament. Indiana.
It was Penn State, actually,
Huh.
who was the runner-up. That surprised me. In 2010, again, Ohio State won the tournament.
I'm going to go with Indiana a second time.
And that is also incorrect. It was Minnesota. In 2009, Purdue won the tournament.
2009. See, now it's dating me a little bit where I'm trying to remember who was playing then. I'll go with Ohio State.
And that is correct. That is your 3rd correct answer. We were just on 2009. 2008, Wisconsin won the tournament. Beating who?
2008. See, now I started watching hoops in 06, so we're kind of getting down to my last little knowledge of what I can maybe remember. Who'd you say won it again?
Wisconsin.
Michigan State.
It was Illinois being the runner-up in 2008. In 2007, Ohio State won the tournament.
And I believe that was when they had Evan Turner. I will go Michigan State.
It was Wisconsin that lost that championship game. In 2006, Iowa won the Big Ten tournament.
Iowa won the Big Ten tournament. In 2006, let's see, Florida won it. Something's telling me Illinois.
It was actually Ohio State. You're right that Florida won that. Ohio State was the team they beat in the national championship game. So I'm surprised you didn't get that one. Illinois won the 2005 Big Ten tournament.
And they won the Natty, so that won't help me there. Indiana.
It was Wisconsin, yet again, losing in a Big Ten tournament or final. Except they won the one before that in 2004. Wisconsin beating who?
In 2004, Wisconsin beating Michigan State.
Well, actually, it's funny. Illinois got revenge for the loss in 2004 the year after, so that is also incorrect. Illinois won the 2003 Big Ten tournament.
Illinois won it. I'll go Michigan State.
It was actually Ohio State. Ohio State won, though, in 2002.
This hopefully is right. I'm going Oh, wait. No. I can't say Maryland was not in the Big Ten. I stopped myself there. Wow, that's tricky. Who'd you say won it again?
Ohio State in 2002.
I'll actually go with Purdue.
It was actually Iowa.
Huh.
Iowa won the tournament the year before, though, in 2001, beating this team.
And at this point, I'm really dating myself, but I will go with Michigan State.
It was Indiana. But Michigan State won the tournament in 2000, beating this team.
And at this point, I'm purely guessing, so I'll just throw out Michigan.
That is incorrect. Michigan State also won the tournament in 1999, beating the same team that you just got wrong. Well, not like you didn't say the team, but it's the same team that they played.
Well, Wisconsin.
It was Illinois in both of those years. Illinois. And then in 1998, and actually,
I don't have enough.
You can't even get a point with this one, but Michigan beat, I'll just tell you, they beat Purdue in 1998. Purdue. I don't think you were going to get that right. So a tough one, though. But you enjoyed it seemed like. I figured that if we went by winners, it would be a lot easier. It's like everybody remembers the winner, but who remembers the loser, right?
I honestly still think if we had the winners, I might have only gotten 1 point. I think I maybe would have gotten 6 or 7 of the teams right.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of teams that won. You mentioned Michigan a lot. You mentioned Michigan State a lot. You mentioned Illinois a couple times. Didn't mention Iowa at all, which is like, it just goes to show how tough the Big Ten is, because you don't think a team like Iowa or Minnesota or Penn State would even make it to the semifinals, much less the actual final game.
Yeah.
But that was our 3-point play. Mat Mlodzinski cannot extend his lead in the standings. He sits at 8 with a whole host of people coming up behind him as we get to the nitty-gritty towards that end of the year quiz. For now, though, we'll head into our final break on this Monday edition of The Review. When we come back, our final conference preview along with stories to start your week, and we'll pick the winners for each of the 6 tournaments we previewed today. All that coming up in the final block of The Review. Back on The Review, closing up shop here in just a sec. Before we do, though, here are Mat Mlodzinski's stories to start your week.
Yeah, stories to start the week. Tuesday in college basketball, and excuse me as I am getting up the games to watch on Tuesday because there's a lot of them. It starts at 5 p.m. You've got Baylor and West Virginia. The top 25 at this time of recording is not yet out again. Baylor will most likely be number 3. West Virginia was already 10th. They'll go up a couple spots. So that's a top 10 matchup that is must-watch TV on Tuesday afternoon. It doesn't stop there. We got 7 p.m., a top 4 matchup between Michigan, who will probably be number 2, and Illinois, who I think will move up at least ahead of Ohio State. So that's probably going to be number 2 versus number 4. So a 5 and 7 o'clock games. And then ending it at 9 p.m., underrated, Wisconsin and Purdue, 2 teams that might not be top 10 teams throughout the season. Wisconsin actually was a team that was up there at the beginning of the year. But 2 teams that I think are maybe a little bit under the radar, even as the Big Ten speaks, especially Purdue. And that'll be a fun matchup to close out your Tuesday. That's my big story. My second story is it doesn't stop there. On Wednesday, you get Creighton and Villanova. And I think the big thing here is the fact that conference tournaments are starting up, but you get a nice Tuesday, Wednesday of action, and you really haven't had many. I feel like this year, maybe it's because of the postponements, every year there's like a Saturday or normally it's a Saturday where there's like, whoa, those are a couple games that you need to watch. I feel like we haven't had that this year. Tuesday seems to be that day. Wednesday's a nice day to close it out with the Creighton Nova.
It's a nice like dinner dessert relationship. You get Tuesday night, then you get Wednesday night. Unfortunately, we're in class Wednesday night, but hey, I mean, that doesn't stop most people, right? I hope Dunbar isn't listening to this as we're recording. Anyway, we'll move into our final conference tournament preview for today, and I saved this one for last because I feel like this conference tournament is going to be the most interesting because you have such a wide range of teams, from teams that have had COVID pauses and thus haven't played many games, to teams that were kind of like your early Cinderella, early darlings at the start of the year and then kind of fell off the map and have sort of come back up to the top, to teams that have really just not been dominant, but they've been steady Eddie the entire year. That's the A10. We just got actually a tweet from an A10 reporter that St. Louis, one of their best players, has decided to return for another year. Thank you, Matt Carter, for posting that in the group chat. It helps us here on the podcast side of the website. Like the Patriot League, though, their play hasn't ended yet, so we don't have a bracket. But there are plenty of teams to pick from that could win this conference, and you could see a couple of these teams getting into the tournament as an at-large bid as well.
Yeah. Again, I'm going with the New York State here. I mentioned how I think Colgate's the best team in New York State. There's reason to believe that St. Bonaventure might hold that title as well. I truly think those two are right there with each other. The big reason for St. Bonnie is they've got 4 guards, all averaging between 11 and a half and about 15 points a game. Then they've got Osan Usaniyi, who was formerly being recruited by Syracuse, which goes to show how good of a player he is if a school like Syracuse is trying to get him. He's a center that's averaging 10 points and 9 rebounds a game, 2.5 blocks. So he can score, he can defend. The big thing about Osani is that he's 6'10", 220 pounds, and he moves really gracefully on his feet, but he's a big body. And he's a junior, which might not mean a lot, but at least he has some experience. It's not his last go around, so maybe he's playing a little bit more free. If you're a senior, sometimes you can play more tight if you realize it's your last chance. But I just think that St. Bonnie has a great team. They've shown it throughout the year. I mean, they're 13-3, and then they've won most of their games in conference. Obviously VCU is another team to keep an eye on. They're second place in the conference. Then you've got the Richmonds, and St. Louis, I think, is still there. I think St. Louis has one of the most talented rosters in the A10. It hasn't always been put together, and COVID's been a big part of that too. While St. Bonaventure got a lot of COVID pauses at the beginning of the year, St. Louis started out winning like 11 straight games and then had to pause because, or maybe it was only, I can't remember if it was 11 or was it 7 or.
I think it was in between 7 and 11, but it was such a long time ago that I can't remember.
And it was just like the fact that they had to pause during that run kind of sucked for them. And then you've got other teams that I don't think will win it, but Davidson and UMass and Rhode Island, teams that have had some big wins this season, might not be able to put it together totally, but they've definitely been very good. One more team to keep an eye on, St. Joseph's. I know this seems really weird because St. Joseph's is near the bottom in the total conference, but you look at a guy in Ryan Daly who's only been back for 2 games. He's one of the best scorers in all of college basketball. He was hurt against Tennessee on December 21st. Came back on February 20th. First game back, 30 points on 19 shots, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Second game back against Dayton, mind you, a Dayton team that's also pretty good this season. They win by 13. Daly scores 25, 7 boards, 4 assists, shoots just a tad under 50% from the field. He's a guy, he's a playmaker, he can take over games. St. Joe's could be a spoiler, at least knocking off one of these tournament bid hopefuls in one of the first rounds.
Well, we'll stop our conference previews there, and now we get to the very interesting part of the day. We're picking winners for all of these tournaments we just talked about, and we'll go in order from where we started to where we just ended. So, the Atlantic Sun.
Staying with Liberty. I'm going with Liberty. I just think that they've had a great body of work. They've proved a lot, and they're the team to beat in the ASUN.
The Patriot League.
Same there. I'm going with Colgate. Navy's right there. Army's shown some things, but I got to keep it with the Gate.
The Ohio Valley.
This one I might surprise you. I'm going to switch from Belmont to Eastern Kentucky. I think that they might sneak this one out. They're playing hot at the end of the season.
The Missouri Valley.
Going with Loyola Chicago. I think Drake might give them a run for their money, but I'm sticking with the Ramblers.
I'm going to change this one up. The West Coast Conference, if Gonzaga plays versus if they don't.
If they play, I will go with Gonzaga easily. If they don't play, I'll go with BYU, but and I know we didn't mention them. I'll say that just keep an eye on San Francisco.
And then finally, the conference we just talked about, the A-10.
And I'm sticking with St. Bonaventure there.
All right, well, those are Mat Mlodzinski's game picks. The boss man's got to get out of here now because he's got another podcast. He shows no level of commitment to any one thing, which is unfortunate, even though this is his website. But yeah, that was day 2, well, episode 2 of our conference tournament preview. Next episode is on Friday. We'll go ahead and tease that for you real quick. I deleted that. Oops, I took it off my screen. On Friday, I will not be here, unfortunately, because I have other obligations that I have to really get on and all that. But where did that go? That's so odd. I believe we're talking about on Friday, like the SWAC or the Northeast Conference. Oh wait, here it is. We're talking the Southern, Sun Belt, Colonial, Northeast, Summit, and MEAC. And then the Monday after that, we'll do the power conferences. You can guess who we left out for the Instagram Live stuff, or for all our fans out there. And like I said, IG Lives will be coming either Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday, Sunday, depending on how the poll goes in our group chat. And we'll keep you guys updated on that. And we'll have a guest host in on Friday. We'll see who that ends up being. And then I'll be back for you on Monday with the big guns, the Power 6, if you want to call them that. Until then, though, guys, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy college basketball games. Like Matt said, Tuesday, Wednesday, big games. Then you got conference tournaments all the way through. We're coming up on that time of year where everything's busy, and keep an eye out for articles. Apparently, Matt Carner just posted a very nice article on the website. Ariel Putterman gave him cheers for that after cheering on Kansas to a win over Baylor. You'll see more homerisms. You'll see more of us messing around, doing trivia that no one can get right. And we'll see what we can do as this season comes to a close and we head into this late spring, early summer, and then the fall. But take care, guys. Have a great rest of your week. This has been episode 20 of The Review. Matt, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys on Friday.